Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. My name is Lisa Elston. I am one of the 5 sublimation specialists at JDS Industries. Thank you again for joining us for our Corel Draw for Beginners 1 course. So in this course we're going to talk first about customizing your Corel Draw. This will just help your computer move a little smoother and things will move a little quicker for you. Next thing we'll go through is our menus, toolbars, and tools. And then we'll talk about some shortcuts that you can use to make things created a little easier. And then we're going to create a couple of templates, and then we'll create an award plate just to show you how to do a quick layout and make things look visually appealing. Okay, so today I'm going to be using Corel Draw 2017. That is the newest version of Corel Draw. They recently just switched from the X7, X8 versions to now they're going to be doing a new version every year. So you'll be looking for that. The newest version is Corel Draw 2017, or some people will call it X9. So let's get started. I'm going to open my Corel Draw. Okay, so when you first download Corel Draw, this is what you're going to see when you open it. This is your welcome menu. You can go take a little tour of the basics to see what's new, things like that, and you can also see some of the hints. I'm going to actually close out some of these little windows here because we don't need them. And then we'll get rid of the welcome screen, and we'll shut off the hints as well. Okay, so when you first open it, we would need to open a blank document. So let's do a File New, or you can use the shortcut Control N. Okay, so this brings up your dialog box. You can pick your paper size and other options there. I'm just going to do a regular 8.5 by 11 letter size document. Okay, from here you're going to go up to Tools and Customization. So in here there is lots of options in here. We're just going to touch base on a few of them that will just help your computer work a little quicker, won't bog it down so much. So under the workspace option, you want to first hit General. So so this is where you can shut off the welcome screen and so that it doesn't come up every time you open up Corel. You can select what you want to see when you open Corel. You can start a new document, open an existing document, open the last document you edited. You can select a template or do nothing at all. I'm going to choose nothing at all. Okay, then next, I like to leave this Show New Document dialog box. I like to leave that one on just because it's a lot easier than having to go in after the document's created and change the paper size. I just like to start it right off from the beginning. So I leave that one on. And then I will shut off the Show Welcome Screen button on Tab Bar. That's this little house-looking little button up in the top left corner of your page there. So I'm going to shut that off. I don't want to see that. And I also don't need to see the show tours in the welcome screen. So shut that off as well. Next, under here you have the undo levels. This is defaulted at 150. So what the undo levels are is how many levels there are when you created your artwork in your document. So basically it's how many things that you did that you can then undo. So it keeps track of a lot if you have that set at 150. So that's 150 things that you did on that page before you hit save. That's a lot of things. So that will bog down your computer. It makes it run a lot slower because it has to remember all 150 of those things that you did. So I like to change that to only about 20 or 25. That's usually plenty of undo levels, things that you can undo. Okay, so once we get that, then we want to go to the display option here. The only thing I want to do here is this last option where it says default action for your mouse wheel. You can pick what you want your mouse wheel to do. You can pick so that it will actually scroll, or you can use your mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out. Personally, I like to zoom in, and it's just personal preference, just whatever you like your mouse wheel to do. Okay, then the next thing we're going to go down to is save. Now up here, this first thing, back up original file before saving. What that does is in the location that you're saving your document, it will also save a backup document. I don't like that on because it will automatically back up your file into a temp folder, and it shows you where that temp folder is located if you ever were to need it again. It doesn't save it forever. But if you do mess something up, you can go back to that temp folder and it saves it every 20 minutes or whatever setting you want. So that way, if you do this auto backup, you don't really need to save an additional backup file in the location where you're saving the actual file. It just seems it takes up more hard drive space, so you don't really need that. I mean, you can click it on if you want, but you don't really need it. Okay. So let's hit OK there. Okay, so you see up here on the top of your page you have your menu bar, and then right below it you have another menu bar. They're very similar. They do, this second menu bar basically does the same thing that your file does. So you can open new documents, create a new document, you can save, print, all of that stuff. So you don't, if you want to leave it there and use this instead of the menu bar, you sure can. But for me, I don't really like using this middle bar there. So I'm going to shut that off. So if you just go to Window and Toolbars, and that middle bar is called your standard bar. And we're just going to click that off. Okay, so now we just have our menu bar and our property bar going across the top of the page. Okay, so let's start by going through some of the things in the menu bar. So under File, you have the option to create new document, new from template, open recent, which will open any recent files you saved. You can close all, save as, import objects or other files. You can export. You can also do your print merge and then exit. Under the edit menu, we don't have anything on the page, so a lot of this is grayed out, but you have the option for undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, delete, duplicate, clone, and some other options in there. Okay, under the view menu, this is where you have the options of how you want to view your page. You can do it in wireframe view, the enhanced view. You can also see if there's a document grid. You can turn on your rulers, turn off your rulers, all those things like that. Okay, under the layout, you can insert pages. So down here on the bottom of your screen, you can see where it says page 1. You can add additional pages to your document if you choose. So if you hit insert page, you have the options of the number of pages you want to add and whether or not you want them added before or after the existing page or like any additional pages. So you can have it add it to the last after the last page, and then you can also pick your paper size for those additional pages. So hit OK, and you can see here we added a second page at the bottom, and you would just go back and forth between each one. Okay, so that's the layout options. Next, under object, this gives you options for how you want different objects to be treated. You can group and ungroup, convert things to curves. You can rotate, things like that. Just different options that you can do to different objects that are on your page. The effects menu gives you options, more options that you can do to objects on your page. These are more advanced options, so don't feel bad. We're not going to go through these today because it would just get way too involved. We'll get to these in another time, just to give you more effects onto your objects. Okay, the bitmap option, that is more if you are working with photos in Corel Draw. Gives you the option of doing different effects to it, making adjustments, things like that. And then of course your text menu. This is pretty straightforward. You can insert characters, create a paragraph text frame, add bullet points, things like that. Tables, pretty obvious, you can create a table with a number of rows and columns that you want to use. And then again, we're back to our tools menu and then our window menu. Okay. So that's our menu. Now let's talk about our property bar. Now the thing with the property bar is that whatever tool you are on will determine what your property bar shows. So I can show you when we click on a different tool, that property bar will actually change. So you have different options depending on what tool you're clicked on. So right now we are on our pick tool. So up here, and we don't have anything on our page and nothing is selected, so we can see what size is our document. It's letter size or 8.5 by 11. You can always change that. You can also make customized sizes. Next to that you have your orientation, whether it's letter or landscape. And then these two buttons here are for those additional pages that we added. So the first one here is it makes all pages the same size. So we started with an 8.5 by 11, and any additional pages are also going to be 8.5 by 11. If you click the second one, what that's going to do is allow you to, when you're on that page, you can change it so that you can do a different size for that page. So right now this page is on tabloid or 11 by 17, and this page is on 8.5 by 11. And allows you, you don't have to stick with one size or another. Okay, and then this is the units we're going to be working in. We're going to be working in inches. The next option is our nudge tool, or nudge distance tool. What that does is when we have an object on our page, and I'm just going to create a box, okay, and we don't have anything selected, we can adjust how far we can move that object with our arrow keys on the keyboard just by telling it how many inches we want that moved. So I'm going to set this to 1 inch and then select my box, and then with my arrow keys I'm going to click it once, twice, 3 times, and it moved it over exactly 3 inches because my nudge tool is set to 1 inch per click, basically. So you hit your arrow key back, 1, 2, 3, it puts it back right where we started. So that's kind of nice when you have multiple objects on your page and you just want to move something temporarily out of the way, but eventually you're going to want it back exactly where it was. So changing that nudge is going to allow you to move it out of the way really easily and then moving it back to the exact same place where it started. So that's when you do that, you want to use a larger increment. If you move it just to 0.01 and then try to move it with your arrow keys, you're going to have to be hitting that arrow key a lot, and you have to keep track of how many times you're hitting it, and that's just almost impossible. So use bigger increments if you want to move it a larger distance. Okay, and then this object here, this is your duplicate distance. We'll get into the duplicate in a little bit. That just tells when you do a duplication, what it does, it offsets the copy. When you make a copy, it'll offset it a bit so that you can see the original item that you copied. And we'll get into that again a little bit. This next thing here is treat all objects as filled. You can either shut that off or turn it on. Sometimes when you have multiple objects, it can be hard to select something that's underneath if the top object is being treated as a filled object. So if you can just turn that off and on as you need, and that'll make things a little bit easier to select. So when you have it on, you can see it right now, it's lit up. I can just click in the middle of the box and it will select it. But if I shut it off and click in the middle of the box, it won't select. I have to actually be on the line. So it's kind of a good and bad thing. So just keep that in mind. That's where that's at. You won't have anything selected on the page, and then you'll have that option of clicking that on or off. Okay. So the next thing is our shape tool. That is used so you can edit objects or text just by manipulating the nodes that the object is made of. So right here we have a box, and right down here at the bottom you see it says rectangle on layer 1. What I want that to be is I actually want that more as a curve. I don't want it to be a rectangle, and I'll show you why. So if we have that selected and we hit the shape tool, you zoom in here, and you click on one of these nodes and then you move it, what that does, it actually makes the corners rounded. And that may not be what I want. I mean, it might be, and that's fine, but that's not what I want in this case. What I want to be able to do is actually manipulate the entire rectangle so that I can make it a whole new shape. So let's undo that. And now what I need to do is make that a curve. So what I do is I'm going to go up to Object and convert it to Curves. And now when I select it, you see at the bottom it says Curve on Layer 1. So now when I hit my Shape tool, you can see it's got the nodes at the corners. And I can manipulate this to do different things and make it a whole new shape if I need it to be. And you can even select one of the nodes and go up here and delete it, and that makes it an entire new object. Actually makes it more like of a pennant or a triangle. Okay, so then once with that, that's what it does with an object. Let's see what it does with text. So let's type up some text. So I just made a 2-line text here. And so if I'm on the shape tool, I'm going to zoom in again. You can see the text, it has these nodes underneath here. So what that is, and then you see we have these lines with the little arrows. One's on the left, and that is pointing downward. The one on the right is pointing to the right. So what this does is the first one, if you have more than one line of text, this one on the left, if you pull it down, it actually increases or decreases the line spacing, or the amount of space between each line. Okay, and then if you pull the one on the right to the right, it actually spaces out the letters farther, or what we call the kerning. It adjusts the kerning. Okay, so the one on the right does the line spacing, or the one on the left does the line spacing, and the one on the right does the kerning. Okay, if all you wanted to do was move one of the letters because it just seemed like it just wasn't in quite the right space, you can click on the node for that letter and use your arrow keys to move it over just slightly. You know, again, depending on how big your nudge is set. You can see the T in text here is a little bit too close to the X. So I'm going to move that over just a nudge. There we go. Sometimes not all fonts are set up to kern correctly. So sometimes you have to make a little bit of an adjustment to it. And so you do that with the shape tool. Okay. So the next thing we have is the crop tool. this here. One thing I wanted to point out is you see on some of these tools there's a little tiny little rectangle in the corner of the little box for each tool. If you click and hold on that tool, there's pops out more tools, and that's what that little triangle means. It means there's more tools under here. So we're not going to be able to go through all of them, of course, but just know that that's where you find additional tools. Okay, so back to the crop tool. So the crop tool will actually crop out certain areas of your document. Sometimes this works good, sometimes not so good in Corel Draw. It's a little bit buggy. So if you see that you're having trouble, especially on photos, I found this. If you bring a photo into Corel Draw and you have additional objects on your page, if you go to crop that photo, it might actually look like it's cropped, but when you go to print, it actually reverts back to uncropped. So it's a little bit of a bug there. So what I would recommend is when you're trying to crop a photo, don't do it in Corel Draw. First open it in Corel Photo Paint if you have that program, which most people do if they have Corel Draw. They usually have the whole graphics suite. So open that photo in Corel Photo Paint and then do the cropping there, and then save it, and then bring it into Corel Draw. So that's going to save you a little bit of a headache there, trying to figure out why this is not cropping when I'm printing, all of that. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Next we have our zoom tool. That's pretty self-explanatory. So if you have the zoom tool on, if you just left click, that zooms in, right click zooms out. You can also zoom into certain areas. It'll just keep zooming if you keep picking it. Right click zooms back out again. And then also to get a shortcut to get to your zoom tool is just hitting the letter Z on your keyboard, and that will again zoom in. Or like I set up in my customization, I actually use my scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so lots of options there. The next thing is your drawing or line options for different lines. You can draw freehand lines. You can also do a 2-point line. If you're on the 2-point line and hold down the shift key at the same time that you drag, it'll draw a perfectly straight line. That way, sometimes if you don't hold the shift key down, it'll get a little off. It'll be kind of hard to get it exactly horizontal or vertical, and then you'll have to go back and try to straighten it out a little bit. So if you hold your shift key down though, that'll keep it nice and straight, and you won't have that problem. Okay, and then there's some other tools, your Bezier pen tool. That's just for making more defined curves. And then some other ones there. You can also, play around with these a little bit when you get a time. That'll help you. The next thing is our artistic media tool. I'm not going to get into too much of this. This is a little bit more advanced. Just know you can create more different textures and effects with your curved lines. Okay, and that's something else you can play with a little bit. I'm going to delete all of these. But I'm going to go back here. One thing on your pick tool, when you're picking objects, if you want to pick more than one, you have to draw all the way around them to select them. You can, if you hold down your Alt key, your Alt key, and then drag, you don't necessarily have to create the box all the way around. You just have to touch the ones that you want to delete there. And then that deletes. And again, Alt, and there you go. Okay. So on to the next tool is our rectangle tool. Pretty self-explanatory. Once you do create your box, the property bar does change, of course. Up here, this first option here, the X and the Y, what that is that is the location of your object on the page. So if you wanted to center that on the page, so we have an 8.5 by 11 page. So to put that on the center of the page, you can kind of eyeball it, but that's a little hard to do sometimes. So if you want to, you can go up here, and if your center of your page is going to be half the distance vertically and horizontally of your page. So a half of an 8.5 by 11 horizontally is going to be 4.25. So that's half of 8.5 by 11, or 8.5, and half of 11 is 5.5. And then you hit enter, and that puts the object right in the middle of the page. Okay. The next thing is the width and the height of our object that we have on the page. So I'm going to change that to 4 by 5. But it is still centered on there. Okay. And then there's other options for rotating, switching the orientation, or flipping it one way or the other if it's right reading or mirrored. You can also change corners on here, and then also you can change the corner roundness just by using these options here. These 4 little fields here represent each corner. This middle little icon, that's the lock. So what that does is that means when you change one of these, it will actually change all 4 corners. So they're all locked together. So they'll all be 0.25. So that's what that does. Okay. And then you also you can turn off and on the scaling, and then also change your outline as well. Okay. And then the same thing goes with your ellipse tool. That's the rounded. You can make circles and ovals with that. Similar, very much similar process as the rectangle tool. The next thing is your polygon tool. This is a really handy tool, especially if you look at the other options that are underneath it. So we have a star. If we want to make a star, you just click it and then drag, make a star. And then up here on your property bar, you can change how many points that star has, and also how much the sharpness that the star has too. So there you go. So that's really cool. You can also go down to the basic shapes, also located under the polygon tool. So basic shapes, and if you click this little menu, that gives you all of these shapes. So if you want a heart, it'll create a heart. Just really easy, quick ways to make really simple objects. Okay, and then also under here, there's for banners, you can make your own banners or call outs. So here's your banners. You can type in some text there. Just really nice things that I've never seen available in any other program. Okay, below the polygon tool, then we have our text tool. So that's pretty straightforward. If you have that on, again, you can pick what font you have, whether bold, italic, underline, and also the horizontal alignment, whether they're going to be centered horizontally or left or right aligned. And that's if you have more than one line of text. Okay. Also with the text tool, there's 2 options of the type of text that you can use in CorelDRAW. The first is what's called paragraph text, and what that is if you are on the text tool and you just create a box, what that does is that creates a frame so that when you're typing, it works a lot like Microsoft Word. So if we type, space, type, and keep typing, see it automatically went to the next line. And because our box wasn't big enough, it didn't finish there. So that's what paragraph text does. It basically makes paragraphs. So if you have a lot of text, I would say more than 3 or 4 lines of text, then you might want to use a paragraph text. Otherwise, you'll use the other kind, which is called artistic text. So what that is you don't create a text box, you just click and start typing. The quick brown And then if you click somewhere else, fox jumped over, and then click someplace else, the lazy dog. So now we have 3 different separate lines of text. So that's artistic text. And you can do the same thing that you could on the other. You can create, change the font and all of that. Okay. You can make more than 1 line of text with artistic. If you just get to the end, hit enter, there, and make a second line. And we'll show you a little bit more involved in that when we talk about creating a trophy or an award plate. Okay. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is your palettes, your color palettes. Okay, so right here, when you first open Corel, you're going to have what's called the default palette open. You can use that one, it's fine. It is an RGB palette. The ones I like to use is my regular RGB palette, not the default palette, and then I like to use my CMYK palette. So I'm going to show you how to open those up. First thing I'm going to do is close the default palette. So if you go to Window and then Color Palettes, and then uncheck the default palette, and that makes it go away. Now you can also go back to Window, Color Palettes, and then click on the CMYK palette, excuse me, and then again go back again, and this time click on the RGB palette. Okay, so what it does, it docks it, both of them, onto the right, and that can be a little bit confusing when you're trying to figure out which one you're supposed to be using. So what I do, I pick my RGB palette, and you can, when you hover over the very top of the palette where those little dotted lines are at the top, that'll tell you what palette you're on, and you can just click and drag that palette, and then you can redock it wherever you want. You can dock it to the top, you can dock it onto the other side, you can dock it onto the bottom as well. But I like to dock it onto the top. So now I have my RGB palette going across the top, and I have my CMYK palette going on to the right, and that's just makes it easier so that I know which palette I'm supposed to be using for whatever document I'm making. So one other thing you can also do is open up your document palette. So let's go back up to Window and Color Palettes, and let's turn on our document palette. And that is going to dock it right at the bottom of your screen. So what that does, if we create an object and do a fill on it, and another fill, and another fill. So you see down here, this palette here, it shows you all of the colors that you've used so far when creating that document. So that's really handy when you're like, okay, so I have this other object. What color did I use? You can just get it right off of your document palette. So that's really handy if you leave that on. And that'll stay there as long as this document is open, and you leave the document palette open, it will always be on. You don't have to open it for every single document. It's just, as long as it's on, it's on. Okay, one other thing on your palettes, up here at the top of your palette you have this X in the white box. What that is that's kind of like almost like an eraser. What it does, it shuts off the fill or the outline that you do. So if you left click on the X, that takes off the fill. Okay, let's put the fill back on. And you can see, if we zoom way in, you can see there's a black outline on this. So if you right click on that X, that removes the outline. And now the same goes for these colors as well. If you left click on a swatch, as long as your object is selected, left click on the swatch, that does the fill, and then zoom in again, and right click on another swatch, and that does the outline. So left click does the fill, right click does the outline. And then you can also change how thick that outline is right up here. There you go. And then down here at the very bottom, you can see these two little swatches. What that is, that's telling you the object you have selected, that's the fill color that's in that object as well as the outline. So this little paint bucket little icon, that's your fill, and then the little pen, that's your outline. And it will also show you how big of an outline you have. Sometimes it doesn't show right there. You might have to hover over it and it will show you what the width of your outline is. Okay. So next we need to talk about our shortcuts. So I'm going to open a file. Okay. So in here I took some pictures, some images of a keyboard so you can see what these shortcuts are going to be. So these shortcuts that I'm going to do, I think there's about 8 or 9 different ones. These are just some basic shortcuts that you should get used to using. What you can do when you're doing shortcuts, this is going to really help you create things much faster and just easier to do. Just get used to doing one new shortcut a week, and I think you'll see within just a really short period of time you'll be doing stuff a lot faster. So let's start with our first one. So creating a new document, you want the shortcut is Control N. So you hold down your Control key and then you hit the letter N, and that brings up your dialog box, so you can pick the size of your page you want. You can also check this do not show dialog box again. So if you always create the same size pages all the time, you don't necessarily need this. So you can just hit this, and then when you hit Control N, it'll just automatically open up that new document. You won't get this dialog box. Okay, so that's new. There's also open. So this is for if you want to open a document that already exists. It's not brand new. So that shortcut is just Control O, not 0. It's the letter O. So Control O. That opens new documents. So you might have to go and search for it if nothing, your documents aren't all saved in the same location. Maybe it's something on your desktop you need to find. So that's how you open those documents. The next thing is copying and pasting. Now this can be heaven sent, or it can be a real drag. So copying and pasting, they go hand in hand. So what happens when if you have a box or a document or text or whatever, you want to copy it and paste it. So what you do is you select the object, and then your shortcut for copy is Control C. So Control C, and it didn't really look like it did anything, but what it does, it actually adds that command into a clipboard that's on your computer. So you can actually copy from anywhere and then paste it in Corel Draw. So say somebody sends you an email and says, here's the text that I want. You can actually select that text in your email, copy it, and then open up your Corel and paste it in there. So that's one nice thing. With copy and paste, you can go from document to document, and there don't even have to be both Corel documents. So that's kind of nice. So once we get this copied, then you want to paste it. So that command is Control V. Okay, and you'll see what happens. So I already have this copied, so let's hit Control V. Now it didn't really look like it did anything, but in actuality it did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, since it's already selected, and move it. See, it actually did place it. And what it does, it places it exactly on top of the first one if they're both in the same document. It places the document right on top of the original. So that can be a little tricky there. So I'm going to show you something we can do as far as copying and pasting from other documents. So this one was open. It is 2 Corel files, but that's okay. So I'm going to go back to this one. We'll hit paste, and again it pasted in exactly the same location as it was in the other document. So that's copying and pasting. Next thing we have is duplicating. This is very similar to copying and pasting. The only thing with duplicating is you cannot take it from another document and pasting it into here. Duplicating is just for within the same document on the same page. So the shortcut for duplicating is Control D. And if you remember when we first started, we were talking about the distance here for the duplicating distance. So it's 0.25 is where we have that set at. So if you hit the shortcut, you have to have your object selected, hit the shortcut Control D. So up here again, you'll get this the first time you do that. So hit OK if you want to keep that at 0.25. And see what it does. It doesn't paste it right on top of the original. It offsets it a little bit. So that might help you actually when you're trying to say, oh, did I paste it or not? This is really a good option to use instead of copying and pasting, is to use the duplicate option. Control D. Okay, the next shortcut we have is the undo option. This is everybody's most favorite tool and most used tool, obviously. Most people actually wear out their Z key on their keyboard, so much so that the print on their key will actually wear off because they use it so much. So when you're creating options, you remember when we were in our customization, we set the number of undo levels. So that's how many times you can hit the Control Z to undo your artwork. So let's pretend we have 5 objects here, different sizes, different shapes. Okay, and I want to get rid of all but the first one. So I just hit Control and then Z, and keep hitting the Z, hold down the Control key and hit the Z again, and one more time, and we're back to that original box. This saves so much time versus having to go up to Edit, Undo, and then Edit, Undo. I mean, it's just a huge time saver. That's why people like that shortcut. Okay. The next shortcuts are Group and Ungroup. This is another really helpful shortcut that's going to save you a lot of time and headache as well. So the shortcuts for grouping and ungrouping, Control G is to group and Control U is to ungroup. So what that does is you have several different objects. Can be shapes, can be text, doesn't really matter. So what you do is you select all of your objects, and you can see right now they're all singular individual pieces. Okay, if you select them all and use your shortcut to group, Control G, now when you select it, you can select them all and move them around and put them wherever you want on the page. Once you get them there, if you want to ungroup them, again, Control U, ungroups them, and now they're just individual little pieces. So that's grouping and ungrouping. This comes in really handy when you're designing. The next one is centering and single or grouped objects on a page. So that can be a little tricky. You know, instead of selecting and doing the X and the Y to center it, the shortcut for that is just the letter P. You don't have to hit Control or anything else, just the letter P. And I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to move this off. So here I have a couple of different objects here. Okay, I'm going to select one of them and hit the letter P. That puts it right in the middle of the page. You can see up here, 4.25 by 5.5. That's right in the middle of the page. Okay. So now if I want multiple objects, select them and hit letter P. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted them to stay separate. Well, what I should have done is I should have grouped them together first. That keeps their orientation and then I can hit the letter P. But since I didn't have them grouped, what it did, it put each individual object into the center of the page. So let's undo that. Now let's go back and group these together. Control G. Now if I hit the letter P, that centers that group of objects onto the center of the page. Very handy for that letter P. I use that all the time. Okay. Next thing is outlines. This is a really handy tool. I use this a lot as well. So what I have here is a box. I'm going to put a red outline on it, and I'm going to make that outline pretty big so you can see it. Okay, so the shortcut to bring up your outline properties box is to hit the F12 key at the top of your keyboard. So with that selected, let's hit F12. There's all kinds of cool little options in here. You can change the color of your outline. You can change how big or small the outline is. You can change the type of outline it is, like a dashed line or spaced outline. You can also change like the corners. If it's a straight line, you can make it into an arrow. And some other cute, cool little options here. Now this down here where it says behind fill and scale with object, these are really important little options here. So I'm going to show you what happens if you with each of those. So here we have two of the same words. They're the same size. So what I have here is this one here is they both have a 6-point outline on them. This one here, if you hit F12, you can see I did not select to have that outline behind my fill or have it scale with the object. So what that does, you can see, no, I have a white fill on this. You can see that the black, because it's not situated behind my fill, it actually encroached into that white area and made the inside even smaller. And that just is not very appealing. And also because I did not have it set to scale with the object, when I scale it up, the size of that outline changes. Okay, now this one here, same thing, it's still a 6-point line, but I have it set so it's behind the fill and to scale with the object. So it doesn't encroach in on my fill color at all. And then also when I scale that up, it doesn't change the size of the outline. No matter how big or how small, it stays the same. So that's really important when you're applying outlines to your objects. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is saving your document. Saving is really important. One thing to remember is if you're not very computer literate, think of your computer as a file cabinet. So basically you have different files in different locations. And when you create a document, you want to save that file in that folder that you created, just like you would in a file cabinet. So we have our document. So you have different options. You have save and save as. So to save a document, you just hit Control S. And then to save as is Shift Control S. So what's the difference between these two? Saving will actually save it if you have a brand new document. So say we have this untitled document here. We have not saved this. So if you hit Control S, you have the option of where you want to save it and what type of document you want to save it as. So if we have a folder created on our desktop, you want to save that into, you'll select that folder, open it, and then name your document and save it in there. Okay. Then also if you have an existing document you've already saved in a location, if you hit Control S, it just saves it as it is with any changes that you made in the same location that you originally saved it. So you won't get that dialog box up that says where you want to save it and all that, because it's already created. That part is already created. You just hit save and it's going to overwrite what was originally done with the latest version. Okay, the save as, what save as does is if you hit Shift Control S, that gives you an option similar to an original save, as if you were just creating a whole new document. So you can save it in a different location or save it as a different file type. That's what saving as does. Okay. So now let's talk about templates. Templates are important, especially in our industry. We use a lot of templates. So most of the time here at JDS, we will create templates for you, especially if they're kind of an odd-shaped product. We're actually getting much better at doing this. But there's still some out there, some older products or some that were just simply squares and rectangles or circles that we figure, well, you should be able to know how to do those kind of objects. So we may not have created a template for those. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do right now, is just do a couple of quick templates. So the first one we're going to do is just like a plaque template. So we were going to create a plaque that is 8 by 10. So I'm going to create a rectangle, and then I'm going to make it the size of the plaque, 8 by 10. If you go up here to next to the location, you have your width and the height of your object. So you type in 8 and then hit your tab key and then hit 10 and then enter. That will change the size. And then if you hit the letter P, that will center it on the page. Okay, so then the next thing we need to do is make another box that is going to be the face size of the plaque. So if you're going to be laser engraving or sublimating or whatever, you want to see what the actual face size is so you know where to put your artwork. So in this case, your duplicate option would work really well. So let's do that. Let's hit the Control D. You can see again it offset it just a little bit. Now I want my face size to be a little smaller. I'm going to make that 7 by 9. So with that selected, I'm going to change my size of my object to 7 by 9 and then again hit the letter P to center it. So that's really quick, really easy to do. You can do this exact same thing with circles. It's really an easy way to make a template. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is one that's a little bit more complicated, not too hard. So this is going to resemble one of our award bases, the ones that are wider on the bottom than they are at the top. So those are a little bit more tricky to make a template for. So like if you're making a plate to fit on that base, this is how you're going to make a template. So let's start by making a box. Take your rectangle tool, make a box. And we're going to make this so it is 4 inches wide by 2.5 inches tall overall. Okay, so the widest points, we're going to make this box. So 4 by 2.5. Okay, and then hit the letter P to center it. Okay, so now we have, it's a rectangle on layer 1, so we need to convert this to curves so we get those little nodes so we can adjust how we're going to do this box. So we need to go under the object menu, or again, right there is your shortcut, Control Q. So let's use our shortcut, Control Q. So now when you have it selected, it says curve on layer 1 versus rectangle on layer 1. Next thing we need to do is create a straight line. So on your 2-point line under here, under this menu, it's usually defaulted on your freehand. If you click and hold, you get the other options. So a 2-point line, hold your shift key down and drag. Okay, let's make that red. So right click on your swatch and then let's make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And now put it right on top of that top line there. We still need to center this red line horizontally. So go up to your X. There we go. And we need to make this 3 inches versus the bottom is going to be 4 inches. Your top is going to be 3 inches. Okay, so make your red line 3 inches. Now when we click our box, we can go to the shape tool and we can just move that in right to the edge of that red line and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, and now you can select the red line and delete it, and there we have our completed template right there. Voila. Okay, last thing we're going to do is an award plate. So this one is one I've done before for lasering. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select all the stuff that's inside here and just move it off to the side. So I just have a little bit of something to go off of. So let's start this little object here. This is something I just found online. There's several free sites you can find, little clip art, things like that. One that I go to quite a bit is this one. It's www.all-free-download.com. That's a nice little site. It's got some nice little clip arts that you can use for free. Just be aware there are some items on there that you would have to pay for. I believe it says that each one does have a little Shutterstock icon underneath them, so that would be an indicator that it's going to send you to a different page where you'd have to pay for that object to download it. But there's a lot of other free stuff on there that you can download. So that's all-free-download.com. Okay. So that's where I got that. So I'm going to I already downloaded it, and I'm going to, and I saved it, and I'm going to import it. So again, File, Import, or Control-I for your shortcut. Okay, and I know that one's on my desktop, and I called it Flourish. Okay, so that's where that's at. I'm going to place it on the bottom. I'm not going to place it exactly where I want it just yet. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create all this text on here. So let's start, and all of this is actually artistic text. Remember when we explained the difference between artistic and paragraph text? We're going to be using artistic text. So we have the word award, and then of, and click somewhere else and type merit, and then presented to Miles Bailey. Okay, and then our last set of text, I'm going to actually do 2 lines of artistic text. So click here, in appreciation of ongoing and outstanding customer support. So when I got to the end of outstanding, I just hit enter and continued typing. So that gave me the 2 lines of text, but I want to center this text vertically, so that everything is lined up. So if you go up with that selected, you go up to your property bar, and it's this little icon next to the bold, italic, and underline option, and you can center the text that way. It only centers these on our page about where we want to put them. I'll move this one, merit. I'm going to offset these a little bit. The thing with text is you can do a lot with text. You can make it really visually appealing using different fonts, just different styles. One thing, kind of a rule of thumb with text, is try not to use more than 3 different typefaces or 3 completely different fonts. So that just makes it easier to read. If I was to put this all as a script font, you would have a really hard time reading this. It wouldn't look very good. So you need a little bit of contrast in there. So that's why we're going to put the presented to and the appreciation of as more of a sans serif font. That just makes it a little bit more pleasing and easier to read. Okay, so I'm going to select the award of merit, and then if I hold my shift key down, I can click on Miles Bailey, and that will select that one also, so that I can change them all at once. So now we'll bring up our font menu and scroll down to this font here. I'm going to call it Champion, because I don't know how to say that word, and it sounds more French than it is, I'm sure. So that's a really small font you can see, and we're going to have to enlarge that quite a bit. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is select the other types of text here, and we'll just change that. Let's just do an avant-garde. It's just a sans serif font, pretty straightforward. So let's enlarge these ones though. So to enlarge, if you just hold down your shift key and click on one of the corner nodes here, that will enlarge it from the middle out. So let's bring this up here, that there. Let's make the word of smaller. I don't want it quite so big. I'd rather have the words award and merit a little bigger. There. There, just like that. And yeah, the Miles Bailey is plenty big. Okay, let's move the presented to up a little bit and make that one just a little bit bigger, not too much. But this one I want to take out almost all the way to the edge, pretty darn close. Get just a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so now the last thing we need to do is center all of these lines of text that we did. So we're going to select the award of merit first and put that at 4.25. If I selected everything and put it at 4.25, it would not still all individually be centered. It would just center them overall, but it wouldn't center each individual piece, so it would still be off a little bit. 2.5 and Miles Bailey 4.25 and this one 4.25, and then our little flourish here at the bottom, I want to center that one as well. Okay, so that's pretty good. The last step is to select all of the text and the little flourish and to center them vertically, so going up and down. So I want to change that Y, on the Y axis, I want to change that to 5.5. So now everything is centered exactly on the page, just like that. So there we have our finished product. You can see over here on our example, it looks a little darker, and that's because I put an outline on this text. Because if you're going to do lasering, it's a little easier to do these little skinny lines, especially on script fonts. So I apply a little bit of an outline on that. Not big, just like a hairline or a 0.5. Okay, so that's done. Okay, so questions. So we'll just answer a few of them. So here's a good one. Where do I find pre-made templates? Okay, so if you are a JDS customer, well, and even if you're not, I will show you two places you can find templates. So on our jdsindustries.com site, if you're a customer, you have your dealer login, so you want to log in. And then you want to search for the part number that you need a template for. So say I'm going to do a can koozie, SBL031. Okay, so that brings up some product information. Underneath the pricing information, you can see these five little icons here. The first one tells you how much inventory we have of that product in each of the warehouses. The second one shows the product specifications, including, the size, the color, whether or not there's a protective plastic on it, all of that things. Then the next one is you can email this image to yourself or to a customer, And then the how-to instructions also will give you the sublimation how-to instructions. Or if it's a lasering product, we'll give you the lasering settings. Just things like that. That's really nice and handy to have that there. And then our last little icon here is the template icon. If you click that and hit save, sometimes it saves right away down to your corner, but it will save most of the time into your downloads folder. So once you hit save, then you go into your Corel Draw, and let's get rid of this, and we want to import that file we just downloaded. So Control-I for import, and then go into your downloads. Oh, there it is, SBL031. And I like to bring it in as curves. That's just so that if there's a font in there that I don't have, it won't create any problems. Okay, so there's our template. Our templates for sublimation have the black line for the bleed edge. So if you ungroup this, you would take your color, your background color, or your photo all the way out to that black line. You don't want to take it just to the inside line because that will create, you'll end up with a little bit of a white line around the edge of your product. So then the red line is the actual product dimensions. So you don't want to take any text or somebody's face. If it's a photo, you don't want to take it beyond that red line. It's kind of just a guideline as to stay within this area when you're actually putting text or people's faces. And then before you print, you want to delete that red line because you don't want that printing. You only want the black line to print. Okay, so if you are not one of our customers or you forget what your login is, there is another place you can find templates without going onto our shopping cart site. What you do is you just go to www.jdsindustries.com/Dropbox, DROPBOX. And that takes you to this site. Some people like the site, some people don't. It's just personal preference. So if you click this little icon over here on the right, that just changes the view that you're seeing these folders. So once you're here, if you click product templates, and you can do the same thing with images as well. Click product templates, then find the folder for the product or the category you're looking for. So sublimation. And sometimes this takes a little bit for that to open because it's got to bring in all of those files that are in that category. So don't fret if it seems like it takes a long time. And it also depends on your internet speed as well. Okay, so that brings up a list. So instead of having to scroll through all of these, you can do a search. So if you hit your Control F as in Frank key, or F as in find, and you can see up here in the bottom, and sometimes it's up at the top, just depends on what browser you're using. Type in the part number, SBL031. You can see it highlighted it. So if you just click on it, and that's going to bring up a preview, and if that looks correct, then you just hit download and direct download, and that's going to, again, bring it into your downloads folder. You can also, if you have a Dropbox account, you can save it into your own Dropbox account. That's kind of handy. Dropbox is free. You can create your own login, and that's kind of a handy tool to have so you can save things on your Dropbox that you don't want to save on your hard drive in case, you know, your hard drive crashes or something happens and you lose your laptop or whatever. You always have that backup option on Dropbox. But if you don't have one, that's okay. You don't absolutely have to have one. And just hit the direct download button, and again, you get the option to save it and save it again, and then you'll go back into your Corel Draw and import it. Okay. Next question, is Corel Draw very expensive? It can be. Corel Draw, if you buy the full-blown version and pay for it all right up front, it's about $499. However, you can pay for a subscription plan where you can pay by the month, and it's only $19.99, I believe. You do still get the full-blown graphic suite, which includes Corel Draw, Corel Photo Paint, some other options as well, some different programs that go along with that. So it can be expensive, but there are other options as well. We actually use the subscription plan because that way we always have the ability to get the latest version. So that's always really nice. We're always up to date. The next question, should I get Adobe Illustrator or Corel Draw? It's really a personal preference kind of thing. To get, well, for either one of them, what you can do is go to either one of the websites, Adobe or Corel, and you can do a 30-day free trial and see which one you actually like better. I think for a beginner, Corel Draw might be a little bit more user-friendly, just with all the help tools that are in there that we talked about under their help menu. That's one that I've never really seen in other programs, is their help menu being that good. So that's really an option. Try the 30-day free trial, and once you try that, you'll probably get a better feel for which one you like better. And last question, where do I find more tutorials? Well, like we said before, in Corel Draw under the help menu there is video tutorials. You can also go directly to YouTube. Just type in anything in the search that you want to know. How do I create a drop shadow in Corel Draw? There's probably at least 5 videos on how to do that. And we're going to continue these webinars, so keep posted, and if you are our customer, when we send out emails, we'll let you know when we'll have another webinar available. Okay. So that does it for us today. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. This has been awesome. I can't wait to do another one of these webinars. So if you guys have any questions, you can contact us. Here's our email address, sublimation@jdsindustries.com, or you can call us at the phone number below, 800-843-8853, if you need any questions answered. Okay, thanks for joining me. Goodbye.